You know how sometimes it's fun just to get out there and do a painting alla prima. The first strokes are fresh, those are exciting. Sometimes it comes out nicely and sometimes it's a flop. Most of the time, it's a great idea to plan a bit. We're walking around, we see a great scene in front of us, we get our cameras out, we take a photo. Now we have a snapshot. A snapshot is not always the best thing to make a painting from. It can help remind us of what we felt at that moment, but we need to do some more planning and more experimenting before we go in to a finished painting. We probably want to consider cropping it, pulling it together tighter. Do we want it to be a more horizontal painting or something dynamic and vertical, or very close up and, a square painting where it limits the viewer from getting out of the painting? Now we have a couple photos to work from. Let's sketch them. And if you want, you can do the sketching right on the location. I often do that, and I take notes to remind me of how I felt at that moment, what the weather was like, what was going on, how I was feeling. I think I just said that. Consider the ratio again, the height, the length, and when we prepare a paper to paint on, we need to make it that same ratio. You don't want to have a great vertical photograph and try to put it on a horizontal piece of paper. It's not going to work. Plan ahead. Think about what you're doing. Your painting at the end will come out much stronger, much more exciting. Thumbnails are a small little sketch that are a quick way to make some decisions. I usually use something about 2 by 3 inches, the size of a credit card. I do some thumbnails in there. I can do line. I look at my composition, and I also do value sketches to try to decide, do I want this dark or that dark? What do I want light? What do I want as middle tones? Thumbnails are an invaluable tool. To create your thumbnails, start with a mundane photo like this one from anywhere. Then we can start working with it, cropping it, eliminating unnecessary objects like the street lights, the post, and the tree, and then do a sketch from it. This one has the lines from the telephone poles or without the telephone poles. It gives us a quick idea of where we're going. Here's another photo crop, square, eliminating unnecessary objects, then doing a sketch from this, again with the extra lines or without the lines and the building. It simplifies it. How about tall vertical? To change it, make it feel a little bit different. Here's the photo crop, and now we do a thumbnail sketch with some lines to add interest, or making it look like it's out in the woods somewhere. Finally, we have a variety of thumbnails from which to choose for our painting. Now to apply this process to the photo and the painting that we're going to create. If we use the square format, it is going to create a tight focus for the viewer and keep them there. What if we want a long horizontal that will give the feeling of the expanse of the ocean and how the land just slides into it? Or perhaps a tall vertical, so we have the strength of the rocks as they hold and push up toward those trees in the distance. Creating thumbnails from each of these gives us a little collection. At a quick glance, we can choose which ones we like and which ones we want to leave aside or for the next time. Now that we've prepared our thumbnail sketches, after looking at our photos, or sometimes I just do a thumbnail sketch on location, out while I'm plein air, painting. Either way, we want to end up with these because by using a simple black and white thumbnail, it simplifies our approach to our painting. This way we can add any color we want. We can make it daytime, nighttime, a storm, or a sunny day. This simplifies it for us, and we can create color schemes. I'm going to do 2 paintings, and my 2 paintings are going to be a horizontal and a vertical, so you can see the approach. I'm also prepared with my palette. I have my colors laid out. I pre-dampened them so the paints are softening. I have cleaned a section of my palette so it's quick to use here with clean color, but I also leave some residual paint at the edge, so if I need to neutralize a color in the center quickly, I can just pull from here without having to make sure my brush is clean and going into another color. I have my brushes off to the side, my favorite brushes. I may use these, whatever. They're ready to go if I need them. I have some extra tools. I have a piece of plastic wrap. You can see I've used it before. You can use these multiple times. I'm careful about using plastic. And I have my old credit card to make marks if I decide to do that. I also have a paper towel nearby or 2 ready to blot if needed. Now I'm pretty much ready to start. If I look at this sketch, I like this one. I think I want to make it longer as I did in the example. So I'll take a piece of tape about the right size and kind of lengthen it out. I think I like that. So I'm now looking at the format stopping here. That tape is pretty transparent, isn't it? Let's try that again. Maybe an extra layer will help soften it. So you can see that I'm going to do this long. And this one, I like the darker ones. I may try a darker one, but I think I like this. And the same situation. I like it a little bit longer, a little bit more vertical, and a strong, strong composition. I like to exaggerate things sometimes. So let's just crop it here a bit. Yeah. And you can do this quickly with a piece of tape, and then later on you can remove the tape in case you want to do a more, a less dramatic composition in the future. So I have my 2 sketches. These are the 2 I'm going to do. And partially I want to do 2 because some of the techniques I'm using are going to take longer. The plastic technique takes time. So while I'm waiting for one to dry, I can be working on the other painting. I do this a lot. Now I need to check my ratio. If I look back at my sketches, I am going to lengthen these. Not really lengthen them, but by narrowing them, it makes it seem more, just makes it seem longer. And I'm going to narrow this one here. There. Now I'm going to start with the horizontal painting. I turn my paper horizontally. I have my, I'm sorry I can't show you I'm going to use this sketch right now to start this out. And I'm going to create it on this paper. Let's bring the palette closer and our painting tools. Got to move a couple things around. There we go. With the horizontal painting, keeping in mind that this is the top of my paper and not up there, that doesn't matter, I'll remove that later. I want to create a soft sky, a soft sea, and dramatic rocks. So the first thing I'll do is lay in a soft sky. I want a high horizon line. My horizon line is going to be about here. Kind of a sunny day. I want the sky to be light because I'm going to put a lot of drama into those rocks. Let's check this color. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's still a little light. I'm going to take a piece of paper. That's about where I want my horizon. I'm going to take my misting spray bottle that creates a wide mist, go across the top of that to get the paper ready to accept the paint. I check the wetness in the light at an angle. I scooch down and I look at an angle into the light to see where it's wet, where it's going to take good paint. I check my color. It's still a little dark. I think I want it lighter. But do remember, even this way, that's a little dark, that's a little lighter, but your paint is going to dry 1/3 lighter than how you lay it down. I want light over here behind the trees, so I'm going to start with the deeper colors off on this right side. And the clouds are going to kind of swoosh in toward this area. So I'm doing diagonal strokes. Now I'll be very careful and bring this along at the horizon line. I lay that in a little more carefully. It's lighter. This could dry with a line. I dampen my brush and then take most of the water out so it's like a sponge now and kind of lift that just to make it softer. Now I can come in with some water. And because I know that the trees and the rocks are going to be more intense and dark than the other things, I can put the lighter values on top. Put them in first so that I can put the darker colors on after. I have my little note about my gloss, sheen, matte, and dry stages of water. I also have my process of going top to bottom in the painting, thinner paint to thicker paint, lighter to dark paint. It's always good to have a little note off to the side. I wonder if you can see that. I think if I put it there, you can see it. Okay. But think about what you're going to do, then make a decision and commit to it. Be faithful to what your original plan was. I'm going to use basically the same color as the sky because the water reflects the sky. I want it very light, probably even lighter than the water, but I think I'm going to add a hint of green into it. After all, it is water. But we are in Maine as well, so I'm going to get a little neutralized over here. This looks rather dark. We'll add a bit more water. Check out the value. I can see really quickly on a scrap piece the comparison of the water and the sky. I know that above that line is wet. So again, I tilt my head into the light so I can see the light reflecting off the water to my eye to see how wet it is and where it's wet. And I'm very carefully going to put in a thin line and leave white between the sky and the water for now. Now before this edge dries, I need to blend that down into the foreground. And as I come forward, you notice I keep picking up a little more paint, slightly change the color. lay that in quickly. I'm also leaving little bits of white paper shining through because it's going to be sparkling, you know. Water also always finds its own level, so keep all your water lines very horizontal. Okay. I have a little dot of something, pigment or something there. I can very lightly, with just a damp, clean brush, try to lift that. Lift it okay. Otherwise, if it doesn't lift, wait until it's totally dry to remove that. I could use a paper towel or a tissue to blotch in some clouds, but I think I want that soft and even. I want the drama to be over here in the trees and the rocks. One more item I'm going to do, if I check how damp that top edge is possibly lay in a little suggestion of a distant shoreline. Let's check this color. I want it more blue. I'm choosing cerulean blue here, mixing it into my blue-gray color. That might be nice. And I'm just going to, again, follow the edge, but not, I want to leave that line of white in between. I'm going to follow the edge right along here. Press down, lift up, jump, skip across. I'm just skipping across, and this now creates a sense of something in that distant shoreline. Here I'm just touching the paper on that edge and leaving a little bit more paint. That's step one on this painting, and now I have to wait for it to dry. So you've got your creative energies going. What are you going to do? We're going to go into the next painting. While this is drying, let's keep those energies going and go to the next painting. So you see, I've turned the paper sideways. I'm going to lightly, I'm going to put this here. If I were alone, I would turn the paper the other way, so I'm not setting my palette on top of this paper. I don't like that. I have a feeling it's going to pull up on some of that paint. Now I have grabbed a couple rolls of masking tape and just set them here, not touching the paint on this, so I can work on this side without touching the painting below. I've also used a darker tape so you can see my ratio a little better. This time we are going to this image. So a lot of dramatic rocks and the trees. But we still need a little bit of sky and a little bit of water. If you're more comfortable with the pencil, just kind of sketching in where we're going, let's do that. Normally we're going to consider the rule of thirds, which is dividing your paper into thirds. But this time I want to push it higher. I'm going to go up to about 1/4 of the sheet for my horizon line, because I really, and just do light horizon line. You might not be able to see that, but it is there. I can see quite well. This will help guide me. Again, I take my flat wash brush. Let's make this one a little bit different. Let's act like it is slightly stormy today, or the storm is coming in from the ocean. Don't know why I just went into the yellow ochre. Let's not do that. Let's start with a sky color and add a bit of burnt umber gray. Very light again. Test the color, looks pretty light. Remembering that horizon line, keeping a thin line there, and then bringing in some clouds. Now I want this more dramatic, so I'm going to take my rough spray bottle, spray it across the top. I'm also leaving some lines, like dry paper lines there, to indicate thicker, heavier clouds. A little more depth, irregular shapes. Voila. Now when I use that spray bottle, I sprayed a little bit down into the water so I can see that in the light. Whatever I put in the water could blend slightly up into the sky. So I want to be a bit careful with that. I'm going to use a more stormy blue, my ultramarine mixed with my burnt umber. That's too dotty. I can see that right now. As I'm mixing and I'm preparing to do the next step, I'm noticing that that right there is like a little blob. Let's see if we can't blend that into some more of the other. See, that's a little better. Just even those couple touches. Make a decision, stick with it. Find that edge of that horizon line. Very, very horizontal. Before that front edge dries, bring the paint down in. I'm going to rather lay my brush very flat and skim it across the surface to create some sparkles. This I know is going to be behind the trees, so I'm not too worried about it. But just in case some shines through, I'll put a little water back there. Same down into here. Let's also add a little horizon line. Not a horizon line, a shoreline in the distance. On that upper edge that goes into the sky, just skip across unevenly. And there's your distant shoreline. Don't worry about this bleeding because it's reflecting in the water. Now to wait for this to dry. And we go back to the other one. I'm prepared now to go back to that first painting, but as I touch it with the back of my finger, we don't want to use the front of our fingers because there's oil on there and it can mess up the painting. This is usually much cleaner. It feels a little cool yet, so I'm going to wait a little bit longer until that dries just a bit more because I want this area to be very dramatic. And in order to do that, it needs to be absolutely dry. Well, not absolutely, but very close to absolutely. The paper on the first one is pretty dry. So let's look at this. We want to think about what we're going to do. This is almost divided half-half with this triangle. So I believe I'm going to push it over a little bit more so it's not quite as even. So I'm going to take this rock line and I'm going to push it up into that water line a little bit more. So I'm making adjustments even from my sketch. I have my sketch nearby. Sorry, I can't get everything onto the screen. But this is pretty damp. Now I plan. I need to think. I know for the rocks, I'm going to need my plastic wrap. And when I use the plastic wrap, after I get some paint down, I'm going to follow that striations of the rocks. That's a natural geological situation where the tectonic plates have taken layers of rock and tilted them on the side to create these amazing lines that go down and towards us. Wonderfully dramatic. I am also going to prepare my paint. My favorite brush is still my flat brush. I do often use one of my round brushes, but for now I'm going to stick pretty much with a flat because I can cover a lot of area very quickly and dramatically. I can also, this is so versatile, I can turn it, let me show you quick. I can turn it on its side to a very thin line, or I can bring it flat and make a wider line. For these rocks, because I want them quite dramatic, I'm going to bring from my palette a good amount of burnt umber, considering how much paper I have to cover here. If it were a larger sheet, I would need more paint prepared. And I'm going to start with some ultramarine blue, partially because the ultramarine and the burnt umber make such amazing grays. I'll probably add in some other, like a little Terrilynn blue, so I'm going to have that ready just in case. That'll help tie the whole painting together. And possibly some burnt sienna. All ready to go. Whoop, that is quite wet, and those are going to bleed together. I don't want them bleeding together quite too much yet. Just a little dab with my paper towel, and that will control that. And let's see, sunny day. Who knows, there might be some burnt umber in the rocks or something. So what we often do, I'm going to start, not burnt umber, yellow ochre. I'm going to start with a little yellow ochre, shiny, bright yellow ochre. A little bit of my alizarin here. And I'm going to again start light to dark. And I'm thinking of these dramatic rocks coming down. Remember to have your sketch nearby. That's just a guide. It's not a rule to follow, but it will guide you. I don't want to start there yet. The rocks in the distance are going to be lighter and more of a cerulean blue. Now I need to work quickly because I want to get this plastic wrap on here. Okay. And I just want to feel the dynamic rush of those rocks. Now as it comes closer, it gets darker, more blue, more intense, a little warmer. Think little rocks back here. I need to connect this rock. Maybe a shadow in there. Leaving white in between, because through experience I have learned that that white is going to bring in highlights for the rocks. My brush is getting a little dry. I want to make sure these points are a little irregular. They're not going to be the same. Get some more blue in here. Just have fun laying this in. Just throw it down there and not worry too much about the shapes exactly. But by doing this, I'm going to grab a little of my ivory black, just toss it in here and there in a dynamic design, that angle, that wonderful diagonal leading up to the trees in the background. I think I want to soften this one right here a little bit. Now I take my plastic wrap, plan it out. I want to keep those, I'm going to start with the main part right here, that nice dynamic diagonals. Lay this on top. This one here is going to be coming at me, so I want this more vertically designed, a little wider perhaps, so you can manipulate, if you do it quickly, you can manipulate your plastic wrap. And just out there, one little thing I noticed when I was laying this in, I need this to be a little more flat here, so I'm going to do a little horizontal line there. There. And there will create a good field of rocks. I like how I kind of vignette. I like how that's done to bring the eye here. It just kind of fades off here, will fade off there. Now I can let this dry, and it's going to take a while I'm working on my other. Before I move, I'm going to double check what's going on here. Looks pretty good. Okay, moving to the number 2 painting. Looking at my second sketch here. This is almost in the middle. I'm going to push that over a little bit, but then I'm going to let the paint play with me as well. I'm not going to take total control over what the paint wants to do. Let's bring out some more blue. I almost ran out of paint last time. It looked like I had a lot, but I think I actually needed a little bit more. We learn as we go along. Good amount of burnt umber, burnt sienna, and possibly some black. This one we decided was a little bit more of a stormy day, so I'm not going to put the yellow ochre in or anything. Even that orange, I might stay away from that. But in the distance, it is going to be, again, a little bit more cerulean blue for those rocks up in the distance. There's not that many of them. I'm looking around, thinking ahead, have my plastic ready. What am I going to do? Plan it out. I want to bring it up into this area. Trees up here, rocks down and through here. Think rocks going into the ocean. Now we come down. Very dramatic. Let your instincts take over. Let's have some fun with this. I'm allowing the brush, at times I come down on the tip of it to create a stronger. Up here the rocks are more at a distance, so I'm going kind of horizontally with these. Make them look like rocks. And sometimes I'm up so on the tip of the brush so it lays down a lot of paint. Other times I kind of drag it, flatten it this way so it drags across and skips across the paper to create that texture. I'm seeing two similar shapes here. They're too similar to each other. I'm going to change that a little bit. I've lost some of my distant blue. Bringing that a little bit more. Touch it up. I want this softer. Right now I'm using water into my brush, a very light wash at the base here. It's drying so quickly today. All right, let's throw in a little more, some dramatic lines with dark. And we're going to hope that this comes out the way we want it. I want a little more rust in there. Yeah, just drab it in here and there. That's a technical term, drabbing. Get my plastic, even more dramatic here. Spread it out. Let the water and the paint and the plastic create its own texture that you'll work with later on. You know, every now and then this doesn't work out. Usually it does, but sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, then you turn the paper over and you start another painting. Now again, I'm at the point of letting this dry. Let's go back and check that first painting to see where it is in its dryness. I'm now going to test the first painting before I just lift off the plastic. I'm going to gently lift part of it and see if it holds some of those designed shapes. Yeah, see, it looks like it's pretty good. So I think it's almost dry enough. Even though it's not totally dry, I can see the paper bumping up a little bit. Part of that is my mounting board is plastic, and the plastic is covered, so there's not much breathability there. So I can lift that off. Now I look at this. What is it looking like to me? The paint and the plastic have done a job. I need to work in partnership with them. I want to soften this white edge down here. I don't want too much contrast to pull the eye down there. Same over here. I like a little skimming, but not too much. I think I want some darker lines right here. So I'm just taking my brush and using that thin side in the right direction. If you're not sure of your stroke, always check here. So here I'm going to do one that's going to come down thin, and then I'm going to twist the brush so as I come down it gets thicker. I'm also going to take my credit card. I have no idea. I think it's a habit that I dip the credit card in the water. That doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to scrape up some of the paint that's here. Now the credit card won't hold much paint, so you have to use it very quickly. So I just dragged it across a straight line like that, and then I pulled it toward me. And again, I don't have a lot of control over this texture because it will create its own. I'm going to drag that up a little bit. I think right here it's wet enough that if I drag the credit card, it will lift it some. Yeah, see? Paper towel. I want to try that again. Yeah, it's kind of fun. Let's add some red in, maybe down here. See how that adds texture and a few lines? And you're not painting all these details. You're painting along with the paint and the tools that you have. And see, with the credit card, it gives you nice kind of jaggedy rock shapes in the painting. Pick up a little paint, lay it down. So make a decision. Are you taking some paint to lay it down, or are you scraping paint away? Kind of step back, squint your eyes, see how everything is working together. Possibly make some adjustments. Clean your brush before you set it down. So it's ready. You don't want to accidentally find, oh no, I left some paint in that. And now it's a big dark mark on your painting. I want to bring in some Terrilynn blue. I want a little bit more blueness in the foreground. I chose the round brush just because it was quick and easy. There's no specific reason for doing that. So this is glazing over the colors that are already there, just to add some variety. Yeah. And now, set my paper towel down, I can bring in my trees. It's pretty dramatic there. I like that. That's pretty cool. Let's get some tree color. I'm going to start with ultramarine blue. I've got my burnt umber there. That would work nicely as well. And my pre-made sap green. It's not pre-made, it's out of a tube, but sometimes having a green, you can use it quickly and easily, and that's why I have it. It's so easy to mix this color, basically using probably ultramarine blue and a lemon yellow, but when I'm in a rush and I'm in the middle of the painting and I have to work quickly, it's nice to have some on hand. All right, in the distant trees, a little more blue, so Terrilynn blue's right there. I pick it up. I'm going to make my tree shape, drag it up. There's my tree tops. There's some more over here. Little branches going out very irregularly. Get my hand out of the way so you can see what's going on. A little more of that cerulean blue to cool it down for the distant ones. Now let's darken that green. I'm thinking branches going horizontally across. The top, the branches reach up to the sky. As they go part way down the tree, they start reaching out because they're heavier, and the base branches will reach down because they're heavy. So keep that in mind as well. I'm getting back further on my brush. I'm going to keep some sky shining through in the distance. Here it starts getting there's so much depth in the trees and the rocks and whatever else is in there, bushes, that it doesn't matter as much. It kind of blends together. Just bring a little bit out here. And I'm going to take a damp brush and just kind of blend it in, because the grass and stuff will come down into the rocks as well, and that ties those together. If you're finding that this is too flat and even, you can take a paper towel, scrunch it up in a very irregular shape, and just blot once and lift. Get a new corner nice and dry, blot and lift. Another one, just to add variety into that. I want a little light down here too. Here. Step back, look at your painting. It's looking kind of fun. There's so much more you could do with this if you wanted. You could add more lines with a credit card or a brush. You now have a plethora of tools and techniques in your arsenal that you can use to make your painting interesting. Here, at this point, be very judicious as to what you're lying in, what you're doing, so that the painting stays connected to itself. Yeah, I want to kind of drag something across there. There's a little more texture. I want to pull out a little light here if I can. Oh. Here's something new that I did. I took another card and I cut up smaller shapes instead of having to worry about the whole side. So I could take this, drag it. If I drag in this direction, then the top part of it is going to be lighter and the base is going to be darker. This exercise is a learning exercise. It is not a finished painting. We're practicing, and you often need to practice and paint something a number of times until you're comfortable enough with it for it to really, really come out the way you want it. Don't be afraid to do things multiple times. You will learn so much from that. I want to add a little blue into these trees. This is the Terrilynn blue, just so it's tying everything together a bit. Just here, just a glaze. Now if you want, test your paper. Okay, we can add possibly a little boat in the distance, and you want to make sure you really have the right balance of water and paint on your brush. Always test it in your scrap area. Too bright. Little triangle. Just a little triangle of a boat. The sail goes above the horizon, and the hull of the boat will be under the horizon. That got a little bright. I'm going to dab it really quickly, set it back into the distance. It got wider than I thought. The dark was a little long, so I'm going to add a second sail. So this will be the spinnaker, that's the big sail in the front, and then I'll just have another little sail to the back here. And a light reflection. If you want for finishing, you can add some birds as well. Find a fine point pen, test it, looks nice. Our birds are just little V's coming into roost. Keep it irregular, make it interesting. I wanted to add a couple more darks into here. Staying way up on the tip of my brush. Yeah. Letting this fade off to the side. Double checking any line that I might not be happy with. Now is a good time to adjust it. I can lift a little paint, perhaps not. This is 1, 2. I got fingers here. I want to get rid of my fingers. Not fingers, but finger shapes. have a blue daub right here. I want to see if I can lift that lightly. Otherwise, I'll make it into a rock that's sticking out, jutting out into the ocean. So I've just dampened it, wait a little bit, and then blot it. Still there, but it's kind of off in the distance, so that's okay to me. Play with this, have fun. It's all about having fun. Let's go check the other painting now. This one looks fairly dry. Let's test and lift. Better to lift it from the bottom. It's not going to affect your design as much. Yep, that looks good. Look at that. I mean, it just brings out like a natural texture in like some sort of granite rock or something, so there's texture. If you're in different areas, pay very close attention to the color of the rocks in the area where you're painting. These are East Coast United States rocks. On the ocean, they're very gray granite, light colors, some quartz in there, and some ore. So they do have a little bit of rustiness in it as well. I'm going back and double checking what I'm doing with my sketch. I don't have to do this exactly, but I can follow this somewhat. Thinking where I'm going, I wanted this to be stormy. Kind of like it. I don't want to add too much with lines. So I'm going to take my credit card again, scrape up some paint, and add it where I think there might be a shadow. Perhaps there's a crevice here that comes down on the side of this granite and creates a shadow. Look how if I drag this. But keep in mind the marks you have already made. Don't mess things up. And don't do too much of a good thing. You can overdo things sometimes. All right, I'm going to get that smaller card, my newer one. Hope that this works. Seems to be a texture on this. I don't think this is the right card to use. I get rid of the texture. That has a little texture too. So this is new to me, but I'm finding that the texture is just interfering with a nice, clean line. Up toward the top, it's getting further away, so the lines are smaller and more, they seem a bit more horizontal. Now let's get some trees in here. Again, we're thinking storm, so my trees are going to be much more storm colored. I'm just kind of looking at this wild green that I'm mixing here. Stormy green. Pretty grayed green, looks okay. Now the storm, so the trees are going to be blown. So the tip tops of the trees, I want them to blow away from the water. See how they're curved? They're curved because the wind is blowing them away from the water. I'm going to come down, I'm going to grip up on my brush a little bit so I have a little more control at that tip-top part. Now I can back off on my brush further and let the looseness of it, my grip, allow the brush to do a little more about what it wants to do. See, green, that Terrilynn a little more of the whatever dark mixture I have there. So by keeping those branches flowing that way, it looks like it's stormy. My brush marks are going in the direction of what the tree branches would be doing. Now I'm just kind of tying in the trees into the rocks. Let's get them sitting down in those rocks a little bit. Pushing and pulling. It's a sculptural effect. I don't think that's the blue I want. I want something more in this way. I'm just dropping color in and letting it find its place. I think I just dribbled some paint there. I'll touch it very lightly, because if I push with a paper towel, it's going to spread that paint out. By this, just touching it, it will lift it. Be careful about that. What's another way we can make this look more stormy? We can add in some, I want to carve some rocks out first. We can add in some storminess, some snow or rain. That's too bright right there. Okay. For me, the best way to do that is with my toothbrush and some acrylic white paint. Great, great, great. Okay, I bumped. All right. Now, I never put acrylic on my easel. It will dry there and I won't be able to get it off. I do have a little extra space somewhere on my tape on the side. I can just put it there. I try to clean off the tube a bit so it'll open easier next time. Close it right up. All right, let's get some storminess into here. Test it out. That looks pretty stormy. What direction are my sprays going in? What direction is the storm coming in? Across diagonally from out to the ocean. Following and picking up the wind that we have the trees going with. And now a little bit of the white. Whoops, I can't test it on my palette. Did you see I almost did that? Let's grab a piece of paper, any piece of paper, scrap paper, test it out here. Looks pretty good. A little bit more. And again, we have to be careful not to do too much of a good thing. I want some brighter white here. A little bit brighter across here. All right, I am going to rinse out my brush in my dirty water quickly. And then while this is drying, I'm going to go to the sink, clean out my tub, clean my fingernail, clean my brush while I'm waiting for this to dry. Just before I do that, I want to experiment. I want to take my big credit card and try dragging it. No, I don't think that's going to work. Test it on my scrap paper again and see if I just drag it across here, if that looks like a storm coming in. Okay, that's about enough.